Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are the
FAIRtax Guys.
Here to dispense some smart pills about taxation.
Yeah.
Now, smart pills, how many remember the old Leonard's Losers show? That's where I got that from. That's an entirely different thing. He instead of picking the winners of the football games every week, he'd pick the losers.
Oh, okay.
Of course, that show hadn't been on for quite a while, but he would say he'd be distributing pigskin smart pills to try to figure out who's going to win this. But we're going to be doing some smart pills on taxation today.
Yeah. And different forms of taxation and some of the popular items that are in Congress that we don't think much of.
Yes, well, if you watched last week's episode, you saw a whole bevy of proposals to change the tax code. Hopefully there haven't been that many. We haven't looked again for this one because they've been on recess, and we'll resume our watch on congress.gov on the next episode of FAIRtax Power Radio.
And I just want to remind people, too, we're kind of recording this in advance because of our travel schedules. Bob was gone during the vacation, the Thanksgiving week. My wife and I are gone the following week, so we had to record this on the 22nd, even though it's several weeks in advance. So, unfortunately, I don't have a grassroots update because I got ahead of Jim.
Okay.
But
Which is good. That leaves us a lot more time to dig into our subject at hand today.
I'll just tell you quickly, if you have something of the grassroots nature, contact Jim Bennett at jim.bennett at fairtax.org. jim.bennett@fairtax.org.
Or if you've got a question or comment, you can, for us, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com, or leave us a question or comment on our Facebook page. But what we want to do today, you hear all the time the words fair tax, flat tax, and VAT, V-A-T, all lumped together in the same sentence sometime, as if they're all corporate cousins of each other. And they are as far apart as they possibly can be. So we're going to dispense some smart pills to you and explain the difference between the fair tax. And we've done the difference between the fair tax and the flat tax quite a bit. We're going to concentrate today on explaining the difference between the fair tax and the European-style VAT, V-A-T, value-added tax. And I found something really cool. Somebody just posted this up not long ago. It's a reference to an article that's a couple of years old. It was published at Market Watch in April of 2017. So this is 2.5 years old, by Peter Morisi, a columnist there. And the first couple of paragraphs of this article pretty set up what we're going to do. Ever notice that the filing deadline for income taxes, April 15th, is about as far away from Election Day as it can get? If the annual ordeal perpetrated itself on October 15th rather than April 15th, the frustration and outrage tax-paying citizens would feel would translate into a voter revolt and finally compel politicians to deliver a simpler and fairer system. Right on with you there. The personal and corporate taxes levy terribly high marginal rates. They offer a myriad of special interest credits and deductions, require expensive record keeping, and impose complex auditing functions at the IRS that have proven, believe it or not, susceptible to political abuse.
Oh, I'm shocked.
Oh, yeah.
They would never do that.
I'll bet. Americans believe it favors the very wealthy and big businesses who can afford high-dollar lobbyists and big campaign contributions. It does encourage businesses of all sizes to make decisions based on tax considerations instead of sound economics. We've been down that road before.
Yep.
And he goes on there, and he's really good until he gets to this point.
Oh, no.
The most comprehensive tax reform would be to replace the personal and corporate income taxes with a European-style VAT.
Oh, time.
Technical foul.
Technical foul.
Yeah. So this columnist, Peter Morisi, recognizes the problem. We just think he comes up with the wrong solution.
Yeah.
So let's kind of explain the difference between the fair tax and the European-style VAT tax. The fair tax, real simple, is just a consumption tax levied at the retail level on new goods and services, period. It does not touch business anywhere along the line, because the taxes that are imposed on business along the line, like the European VAT tax, are just costs of doing business that are passed on to the consumer. So the fair tax says, heck with all that, let's just let the consumer pay the tax and not burden business with what goes on with this VAT.
Yeah,
Your turn.
A sales tax that's levied on the final sale of the new item is so simple that 45 of the 50 states have a sales tax because it's very simple. It's very easy to enforce. Evasion of it is very, very limited. And compare that to a VAT tax and say that he wants to eliminate, the income tax and sales taxes in favor of a VAT tax. Well, we need to get into that. First off, if you go to FAIRtax.org, and in the tab line there, you click FAQ, frequently asked questions, and you scroll down and to the question, what about value-added taxes like they have in Europe and Canada? Are they not consumption taxes? Okay, and here's the summary, probably written by Dr. Karen Walby, who's our Director of Research for both the national group and the group here in Florida. All right. While VATs are also consumption taxes and better than income taxes, the fair tax is not a VAT. A VAT works very differently. It taxes every stage of production. It is much more complex and is typically hidden from the retail consumer. That's not a good thing. Second, in industrialized countries that have a VAT, it coexists with a high rate income tax, payroll tax, and many other taxes that in some instances have led to marginal tax rates as high as 70%.
Yeah, let me run that by you again. The fair tax replaces the income tax.
Right.
The VAT taxes are charged on top of the income taxes that exist there already.
Oh, and there are people in Congress that are salivating over
that
this.
is a huge difference.
That's not a good idea. Third, in all other industrialized countries except Australia and Japan have a much larger tax burden than the U.S., which requires higher rates and makes tax administration much more difficult. Lastly, the VAT tax is a lobbyist's dream, allowing them to install their loopholes unbeknownst to the purchaser. And a retail sales tax, in contrast, is a lobbyist nightmare applied as it is under the bright lights of the retail counter.
Yeah. Well, I understand as well, though, the fair tax, the permanent implementation of the fair tax is contingent upon repealing the 16th Amendment.
Yeah.
So the fair tax is written in such a way that you cannot have, it would be constitutionally, unconstitutional to have an income tax once the 16th Amendment is repealed.
Not so with the VAT tax.
Yeah. So the fair tax is designed to make sure that it is not a companion to the income tax. It is a replacement for it. And the VAT taxes and the income taxes just go sailing right along together, hand in hand, with no problem.
Now, I've told this story before. When my wife and I were first involved in the fair tax, and we were not that knowledgeable about it, Nick and Barb Rudlick were the county coordinators, and they asked us to come and help them at an outdoor event in the villages. And I was handing out cards. Here's some information about the fair tax. And one lady with a distinct British accent said, "I'm from the UK. It doesn't help me." She said, and she wagged her finger at me. She said, "Don't let them do what they did to us. They promised us if we had a VAT tax that we could reduce the income tax. They did not do that. Now we have both." And she was adamant about that. Don't let them do that, okay?
Yes.
And that I'll never forget that. She was very forced. And as I learned more about the fair tax and the VAT tax and so forth, I realized why she was so adamant.
Yes. Never underestimate the government's lust for your money.
Yeah. It's like I've said before, if the government says something about being fair, hang on to your wallet.
Absolutely. All right, let's get more into the nuts and bolts of what's the difference between the fair tax and the VAT. Karen Walby came up with a really good little thing.
I'm going to put this up here. It's a chart that Dr. Walby made, and anyways, comparison of fair tax and value-added tax, and they have feature on the left-hand side, tax-based, method of collection, filing of returns, and so on. And then they have national sales tax, such as the fair tax, and the VAT tax. Very simple comparison chart.
They agree on one item.
Yeah,
The first one.
final consumption.
Yeah.
And that's it.
The consumer pays it.
Yep. And that's where the comparison stops.
Absolutely.
Okay. So the method of collection for the fair tax, business selling goods and services at the retail collect and remit the tax code. It's very simple.
Keyword retail. If you're
Yeah.
a wholesale business, if you're a manufacturer, the fair tax does not touch you at all.
Yep.
It does not add to your cost of doing business.
Yep.
The only businesses that deal with the fair tax are the retailers who will collect it from the consumer and remit it to their state departments of revenue, and the computer keeps track of it all.
Yeah, like your grocery store, Walmart, Target, whatever, the gas station, whatever.
How is the VAT tax collected?
Okay, the VAT is and now I already read the summary of it, so we're going to get a little bit more detail. The VAT is imposed and collected on the value added at each stage of production and distribution of goods and service. Now think about that. Internalize that, okay? The VAT is imposed and collected on the value added at each stage of production and distribution. So if you're going to make a car, you're going to start with some iron ore.
Correct.
You got to dig the iron ore out of the ground and send it to the steel plant so they can make iron out of iron ore. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they took that and they added value to it.
Yeah.
So they have to pay a value-added tax on whatever they increase the value of it.
Mm-hmm.
Then it goes to another process where you make steel. And steel, just, getting back to the old chemistry teacher here, steel is just iron with a little bit carbon mixed in, okay? But it's very important because it's a lot stronger. So you added value by making it into steel, so a tax is levied on it and collected by the government from the manufacturers, from the company there making the steel. Then the steel is made into certain components, fenders, frames, and so on. All right. Value was added to it as the car is processed, and at every stage of the production. And think about all the stuff that goes into a car.
Yeah, when they manufacture the parts out of the sheet steel, then that is adding value. It's the same thing with the tires.
Yeah,
how the rubber, and I imagine that's synthetic rubber or however, but all the stuff that goes into making rubber that eventually becomes a tire.
That's right.
Is taxed at every stage of production.
Production and distribution.
And then the glass, and then all the plastic, and all the different, you meant parts and pieces in a car.
All the computer parts now, all the wiring and everything. I mean, there's a lot goes in today's cars. It's not like the old Model Ts, So, and just try to imagine a VAT tax applied to the product, the component at every stage of production. Circuit boards, you start with a sheet of plastic, and then it's just mind-boggling. And this is what people say, oh, VAT tax is much simpler. Holy mackerel, it's terrible. So, that alone should scare the hell out of you, all right? Okay, filing of returns. For the fair tax, individuals do not have to keep records or file a tax return. Businesses selling goods and services at the retail remit a sales tax monthly. And I can attest, when my wife and I had our truck leasing business, we had to pay sales tax on the leases we collected. It's very simple. You take the gross amount, you multiply it by the tax rate, you get the figure, you make a deposit, you're done. It takes minutes. It takes minutes. Okay?
All right.
So,
but with the VAT tax, all businesses, whether you are a manufacturer, a wholesaler, or a retailer, the VAT tax is going to hit all of you. Now, Miss Producer, I need to see that sign again. You were flashing at something.
Yeah, so under the VAT tax, it says, all businesses, manufacturing, wholesale, and retail, collect and remit it. Does that sound simple to you?
So what do you think the final cost to the consumer of a retail product is when you've got all those embedded taxes in it?
Yeah. Yeah, okay, let's see. Calculation of the tax and visibility. All right. For the fair tax, the tax rate times the retail price. That's it. That's a pretty simple
It's a percentage
formula.
of the retail price.
Yeah.
and with the fair tax, it's included in the price. It's not added on after the fact.
That's right. And it's there on the receipt.
Yes, you tell people that the fair tax is a 23% inclusive tax, and they recoil in horror, thinking it's going to turn a $100 item on the shelf into a $123 item at the cash register. Not so. It's like the taxes on fuel. They are there. But they're not added on after the fact. They're included in the price.
That's right.
Difference between the fair tax and the fuel taxes, again, is you'll see your fair tax on your receipt. You won't see your fuel taxes on the receipt.
And you won't see the VAT tax on the receipt either, because to calculate that, the taxes due equal the total taxes collected on consumer purchases minus total taxes paid on business purchases. So
that sounds rather complex to figure out.
it does. So the business has to remit the VAT tax at every stage of production and distribution to the government, but then they get a credit back. Holy cow, what is the point of this thing? You know, it's terrible. All right,
well,
we're going to make this available. I can't put a PDF on our Facebook page, but I can convert this into a JPEG, and I'll put it on our Facebook page so you folks can download it and take a look at it. And if I find out exactly where it is in fairtax.org, I'll let you know.
Okay, well, I like the transparency. The amount of tax on a retail purchase must be stated on the receipt, period, end of story.
Yep.
For the VAT tax, the amount of tax on the purchase is not separately stated on the receipt. It's just embedded in the retail price.
That's why I've nicknamed it the stealth tax, because that's what it is. I mean, there's a lot of record keeping, there's a lot of collecting and refunding going on, there's a lot of congressional hanky-panky going on besides behind the scenes and so forth, and it's all invisible to the consumer. We never see any of it.
Absolutely. How many deductions do we have to the fair tax?
Let's see. None.
There you go.
Because there's nothing to deduct it from. There's no income tax. You know, I'll lose the deduction on my interest, my home interest, mortgage interest. Yeah, because there'll be nothing to deduct it from.
There you
know?
go. But there's the fair tax is collected on the retail purchase of new goods and services, period. Doesn't matter what it is. No exemptions, nothing like that. And with the VAT tax, well, it's a little more complicated.
Yeah. Businesses claim a credit for all value-added taxes paid on the purchase of taxable goods and services. Input. Yeah, so they and in order to get that credit, they have to file some kind of a return with the federal government, and they have to let them know everything they're doing, you know, what they're manufacturing and the costs involved and so forth. They had to add it, then they had to subtract it. This doesn't sound very, very simple to me.
No, it isn't, and that's that is probably, I don't know, you can't pick out the most attractive feature of the fair tax is its simplicity. I mean, it's a fifth grader could figure it out.
That's right. Yeah, that's true. It really is very simple. Yeah. Items excluded. Well, income is only taxed when it's spent.
Not when it's made, not when it's inherited, not when it's won, not when anything. When you get it, it is no longer the government's business how you get your money, how much you get your money, where you get it from. The government only gets their hands on it when you spend it.
Yeah. So the government is not getting into your personal effects. It's not you don't have to divulge anything of your personal nature, personal finance nature. All right, it's none of their business. Okay, so with the fair tax,
and it taxes all spending. The income tax makes criminals out of taxpayers, and the fair tax makes taxpayers out of criminals. I like that.
There you go. Yep. So used goods are exempt from the fair tax. All right, we're only going to tax it once. All right, we're not going to tax it every time it's sold, which actually does happen with some of the state sales taxes right now. So it's going to only be affected on a brand new item the first time it's sold to the consumer. All right, it's also exempted from exports, so the fair tax will not be charged. That gives our companies a huge advantage. You know,
Yeah, 'cause that's one of the similarities between the fair tax and the VAT tax is that the VAT tax is not applied. Well, actually, the tax that you've paid all along the line is refunded back to the person who is putting it on the export market.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so the VAT tax is not embedded in the price of exports.
That's right. But for the fair tax, it's not on the exported item because it's only collected at the point of sale here in the U.S.
Correct.
So if a company is making a product that's going to be shipped overseas, it is minus the fair tax. So that levels the playing field because, like Bob just explained, the VAT tax is removed when a European company makes a product and sends it over here. They remove the VAT tax. And under the fair tax, when we send a product over there, the fair tax will not be included.
Because it hasn't been taxed yet. It's only been produced. It hasn't been sold at the retail level.
That's right. So
There
that's
we go.
going to be a huge advantage for our companies. Think about that. That's really important.
Yeah, one other thing real quick under the fair tax, education and training, college tuition or
That's
trade
right.
school tuition, that's considered an investment under the fair tax. That is not a retail purchase. So no fair tax will be charged on your college tuition or what it costs to go to trade school or anything like that.
Yeah, and that's very important because we want people to earn more because generally when they earn more, they'll spend more.
Correct.
Right. Yep.
Okay, we got to move along here. Time's getting away from us.
Yeah.
I love the rebate portion here of our little
Yeah.
little chart. The rebate, of course, we call it the prebate because usually on a rebate you spend the money and then get refunded. On the prebate, you get the money ahead of time before you spend it.
Yeah. That's right. So so the family consumption allowance, nicknamed the prebate, is going to ensure that every family pays no fair tax up to the poverty level, as Bob explained. Okay. Very important because the fair tax would never pass without it.
Yes.
The prebate is the key to fairness with the fair tax. Okay,
How much prebate do you get under the VAT tax?
goose egg. All right, there's nothing there because for one thing, they wouldn't want the consumer to know how much VAT tax is included in the item. All right, that's a great secret that only Congress and the business people, the companies, have to know. They certainly don't want the consumer to know how much the VAT tax is affecting them. Oh my goodness. So yeah. So no, there's no refund, prebate, family consumption allowance. The VAT is the VAX, and that's it. You pay for it when you buy stuff.
Yes.
And finally,
tax administration. Very simple. The fair tax is collected by the state departments of revenue, 45 of which are already collecting a state sales tax.
yeah, all right.
And so, again, it is enforced and administered by the states, which means the IRS goes away. There will be no longer any need for an enforcement or administrative agency at the federal level with a fair tax. There will only be a small office in the Department of the Treasury to receive the money that the states will remit up to the federal level.
Yep.
The states will collect it. The states will go after any fraud and any evasion, which will be next to nothing. But, you know, if a particular retailer decides they want to keep it rather than remit it to the state will go after him. The consumer is untouched by the enforcement and administration process of the fair tax.
And as far as the like Bob said, the states collecting it and remitting it, every state sells gasoline, and there's a federal excise tax on every gallon of gasoline. So they're already doing this. Every state knows how to do this. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, them feds, they profit every time somebody moves a muscle with that federal exercise tax, don't they? That's a song out of a line out of an old country song from a long time ago. I couldn't resist.
So, how do they collect? What is the administration for the value-added tax? The National Revenue Agency, also known as the IRS.
Yeah, their version of the IRS.
The IRS. Well, we've talked about the IRS before, and enough said about that. So, the value-added tax is not a good idea. It's a stealthy tax. It's a complicated tax. It requires a lot of record keeping. It's going to be very costly to the businesses. And when the businesses assume a cost of doing business, who pays for it?
The consumer pays for it.
That's right. We do. All right. When we buy stuff, always and forever, the cost of doing business is applied to the cost of their product and service, and the final consumer, you and I, pay for it. And the VAT tax would be no different.
Amen. Well, as our friend Leonard used to say, another load of smart pills has been delivered. And so tune in next week for another load. But right now, you got your logo store thing.
Yeah. Let me.
And I still got this tickle in my throat that won't go away. Need some more chill wine.
My little list here. Okay. By the next time you see the next episode of FAIRtax Power Radio, we should have examples of the earrings. I'll put the graphic up here so you can see them. But the FAIRtax...
Miss Producer, you're going to model them things, not
That's
me.
right. That's right. We're going to have to do that because we'll get a good idea of how big they are. I got the hiccups right now, so it's a little difficult. All right. We have these nice tote bags that I can't get up here. All right, like this one. This is a nice bag, okay? And, let's not forget this one because we did.
Y'all catch that.
Thank you, Bob.
You're welcome.
Thanks for reminding me about the yard sign.
Okay. Nothing says we can't have a little fun here.
The FAIRtax tumblers, nice glasses with the FAIRtax logo on them, okay? We have the umbrellas are back. Palm cards. You can get palm cards with great information on both sides. There's some websites on the back side, and these are good for introducing people. So bring these with you. Have some in your purse or in your pocket or something. When we go out to dinner, whenever we write out the check, we always leave one of these. Okay, you'll get them in a package like this. All right, from the FAIRtax logo store. Very good. Prebate cards. Basic information about the FAIRtax on one side, the prebate schedule on the back side. They're the size of a business card, so these are very handy. They're much easier to hang on to and put them in your pocket and so forth, like my congressman does. The scrolling banner. This is, if you go to a town hall, we're requiring you to bring this to your town hall, okay? Let's put it that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you get in trouble with anybody, tell them the FAIRtax guys told you had to bring that to your town hall meeting.
Yes.
And I don't think that'll help you anyways, but so anyway, there's a lot of other stuff. FAIRtaxLogoStore.org. FAIRtaxLogoStore.org. Go on the website. Look around the different pages. There's many more items than what I've listed here. Certainly you'll find something that you'll find that you want to demonstrate your support for the FAIRtax, because that's how we're going to get this done. When a lot of people, you can wear a FAIRtax hat, if you go golfing, you can get a nice shirt. This makes a good golf shirt. What the heck? So make sure everybody knows about your support for the FAIRtax by going to FAIRtaxLogoStore.org.
All right, and if you missed it earlier, real quick, we want to make sure that we credit Karen Walby, Dr. Walby, the Director of Research for the National FAIRtax Organization, for coming up with all of this comparison we've been using between the FAIRtax and the VAT tax. And Karen, like all the rest of us, is a volunteer. We appreciate your efforts.
That's right. That's right. We're all volunteers, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Every single FAIRtax volunteer across the country. There are no paid positions. The national group, the state groups, we're all volunteers. So help us out.
I'm afraid that's going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Thank you so much for watching and or listening, whichever may be the case. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
The FAIRtax Guys, again, reminding you that the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So what would you do for her?
We've got several programs that will help her. We just need to find out how much she makes. But the good news is, the less she does, the more we can help.
Yeah.
If I may, with the FAIRtax, we wouldn't even tax her income. So the more she makes, the more she has.
But still, a consumption tax could eat up a lot of her income.
Which is why at the beginning of every month, we're actually going to give back all that she pays in taxes on basic necessities.
You're going to give her back her taxes?
Every month, on everything taxed on basic necessities. But we're also going to give it back to you and to every American citizen.
Why?
Well, we believe taxes should be fair.